Join me as I dive deep into the dark reality of femicides worldwide and uncover the shocking statistics that need to be revealed. Femicides, a term you might not be familiar with, but it's a reality that's plaguing our world. It's the intentional killing of women and girls, often perpetrated by men. It's a pressing issue that needs more attention globally, and I'm glad you're here to learn more about it. The fact that we're not talking about it enough is a problem in itself. The more we ignore it, the more we're perpetuating the culture of silence and acceptance. We need to acknowledge the gravity of the situation and work towards creating a world where women's lives are valued and respected. Imagine living in a society where your gender makes you a target. You're constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering if you'll make it home safely. That's the reality for many women around the world. It's a feeling of vulnerability that no one should ever have to experience. It's time we take femicides out of the shadows and onto the global stage. We need to recognize it as a human rights issue, a public health crisis, and a threat to global peace and security. According to the World Health Organization, an estimated 87,000 women were intentionally killed in 2017, with many more cases going unreported. That's 137 women killed every single day. These numbers are staggering, and they're only the tip of the iceberg. In some countries, femicides account for as much as 40% of all murders. These are not just numbers, they represent real women who had families, friends, and communities that loved them. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime reports that in 2018, the global rate of femicides was 2.3 per 100,000 female population. This might seem small, but it's a rate that's increasing, and it's happening in every region of the world. Femicides are not limited to any particular race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic group. They're happening in our neighborhoods, our cities, and our towns. They're happening to our sisters, our mothers, our daughters, and our friends. In many cases, femicides are committed by intimate partners or family members. This is a terrifying reality, as it means that the people who are supposed to love and protect us are often the ones perpetuating the violence. The reasons behind femicides are complex and multifaceted. They're rooted in social, cultural, and economic factors that perpetuate gender inequality and discrimination. In many societies, women are seen as inferior, their bodies as property, and their lives as disposable. This toxic masculinity is a breeding ground for femicides, as it creates a culture where violence against women is accepted and even encouraged. We need to acknowledge the role that patriarchal societies play in perpetuating femicides. We need to recognize that gender-based violence is a product of a system that values men over women. The economic marginalization of women is another factor contributing to femicides. When women are financially dependent on their abusers, they're trapped in a cycle of violence with no escape. Cultural norms and practices also play a significant role in perpetuating femicides. In some societies, honor killings are seen as a way to restore family honor, even when the woman is the victim. The lack of education and awareness about femicides is another major hurdle. When we don't talk about it, we're not empowering women with the knowledge and tools they need to protect themselves. There are countless stories of women who have been brutally murdered by their partners, families, or strangers. These stories are heartbreaking, and they're a stark reminder of the reality we're facing. Take, for example, the story of Maria, a young woman from Latin America who was killed by her ex-partner in front of her children. Her only crime was trying to leave a toxic relationship. Or the story of Amara, a Nigerian woman who was brutally murdered by her husband after she discovered he was having an affair. Her husband was convicted, but the sentence was lenient, and he's now back on the streets. These stories are just a few examples of the countless femicides that happen every day. They're a reminder that we need to do more, we need to do better. One crucial insight that's often overlooked is the role of the judiciary system in perpetuating femicides. When perpetrators are not held accountable, it sends a message that violence against women is acceptable. However, there are also stories of resilience and hope. Take, for example, the story of the Argentine women who fought for justice after their daughters were brutally murdered. Their fight led to a change in the law, and now Argentina has some of the toughest femicide laws in the world. These stories of resilience give us hope, but they also highlight the fact that we're not doing enough. We need to continue to push for change, to demand justice, and to create a world where women are valued and respected. One thing is clear, we can't afford to stay silent anymore. Femicides are a global problem that requires a global response. We need to raise awareness, we need to educate, and we need to take action. As we close this video, I want to leave you with a sense of hope and urgency. We can create a world where women are safe, where they're valued, and where they're respected. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments, watch related videos on the topic, and subscribe for more content that raises awareness about critical issues. Every year, countless lives are lost to femicide, yet many people don't even know the staggering numbers behind this crisis or how it impacts our communities. Femicide, which is essentially the killing of women and girls, is a critical issue that we need to talk about. It's a crisis that's often overlooked, yet it affects us all in one way or another. When we think about femicide, we often think about it as a women's issue, but it's not. It's a societal issue that requires a collective effort to address. We need to understand the magnitude of this problem and work together to find solutions. It's essential to define what femicide means because many people still don't understand its significance. The term femicide was first coined in the 1990s, and it refers to the intentional killing of women and girls, primarily because of their gender. In the USA, the statistics surrounding femicides are downright alarming. In 2017, a total of 3,506 women were killed by their intimate partners. That's an average of 3 women every single day. This problem is not limited to intimate partner violence. In 2018, women were 21% more likely to be killed by their intimate partners than by strangers. The number of femicides in the USA is consistently high, and it's clear that we have a crisis on our hands. In 2019, a total of 1,357 women were murdered by men, and that's just the reported cases. The actual number is likely much higher. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence estimates that 1 in 4 women has experienced some form of domestic violence, which is often a precursor to femicide. These statistics are staggering, and they highlight the scale of the problem we're facing. But it's not just about the numbers, it's about the lives that are lost, the families that are torn apart, and the communities that are affected. Femicide is not just a personal issue, it's a societal issue that requires a collective response. We need to understand the contributing factors, such as domestic violence, socioeconomic issues, and cultural attitudes towards women. One of the primary contributing factors to femicide is domestic violence. Studies have shown that women who experience domestic violence are 5 times more likely to be killed by their partner. Domestic violence is a significant risk factor for femicide, and it's essential that we take it seriously. We need to create a culture where survivors of domestic violence feel supported and empowered to seek help. Socioeconomic issues also play a significant role in femicide. Women who live in poverty are more likely to experience domestic violence and femicide. The lack of access to education, employment, and healthcare exacerbates the problem, making it even harder for women to escape abusive relationships. Cultural attitudes towards women also contribute to femicide. The objectification and dehumanization of women in our society creates an environment where femicide can thrive. We need to challenge these attitudes and create a culture where women are valued and respected. We need to teach our children that women are equal and deserving of respect, and that violence against women is never acceptable. In 2014, Shannon Harris was murdered by her husband in their home in Michigan. She was a 25-year-old mother of 2 who had been experiencing domestic violence for years. Her husband had a history of abuse, and Shannon had even filed for a restraining order, but it wasn't enough to protect her. Her story is heartbreaking, and it's a stark reminder of the severity of femicide. Shannon's story is just one example of the countless lives lost to femicide. It's a tragedy that highlights the importance of taking action. We need to create a world where women are safe and valued. Femicide is a critical issue that requires immediate attention. We need to raise awareness about the magnitude of the problem and work together to find solutions. Let's recap the key points we've discussed today. Femicide is a critical issue that affects us all, the statistics are alarming, and the contributing factors are complex. We need to take action, raise awareness, and work together to create a world where women are safe and valued. Remember to check out our next video on gender-based violence, where we'll delve deeper into the issue and explore ways to create a safer world for all. What are your thoughts on femicide and gender-based violence? Leave a comment below and let's continue the conversation. Homicide rates among Black women in the USA are a growing concern that demands our attention. The numbers are staggering, with Black women being disproportionately represented among homicide victims. This is a crisis that affects not only the individuals and families who have lost loved ones but also the entire community. It's essential that we understand the root causes of this problem and work together to find solutions. The alarming homicide rates of black women are not just a statistic, they represent a loss of life, a loss of potential, and a loss of hope. Behind each number is a story of a mother, daughter, sister, or friend who was taken from us far too soon. We owe it to them to explore the underlying factors contributing to these rates and to take action to prevent further tragedies. It's crucial that we approach this topic with empathy and understanding, acknowledging the systemic barriers and social injustices that have led to this crisis. By examining the data and listening to the stories of those affected, we can gain a deeper understanding of the issues at play and work towards creating a safer, more equitable society for all. In this video, we'll delve into the complexities surrounding the high homicide rates of black women, exploring the challenges, the contributing factors, and the stories that highlight the human cost of this crisis. Systemic racism and discrimination are significant contributors to the high homicide rates among black women. These biases can lead to a lack of access to resources, opportunities, and social services, creating an environment where violence can thrive. Additionally, the criminal justice system's failures to adequately address and respond to violence against black women can perpetuate a culture of impunity. The lack of data and research on this topic only exacerbates the problem. We need more studies and analyses to understand the specific challenges faced by black women and to identify effective solutions. Without this information, we're left with a lack of accountability and a lack of urgency to address the issue. Societal neglect and marginalization of black women's experiences also play a significant role in the high homicide rates. The media's failure to adequately report on and highlight these stories can create a false narrative that these women's lives are less valuable or less deserving of attention. This perpetuates a culture of silence and indifference, allowing the crisis to continue unchecked. Furthermore, the myth that black women are somehow more resilient or stronger than others can lead to a lack of acknowledgement of their vulnerability and susceptibility to violence. This misconception can result in a lack of support and resources for black women, leaving them to face the challenges alone. The fact that black women are often the primary caregivers and providers for their families only adds to the complexity of the issue. When a black woman is lost to homicide, the ripple effects can be devastating, leaving families and communities without a vital source of support. Moreover, the lack of access to quality education, job opportunities, and healthcare can limit black women's ability to create a safer and more stable life for themselves and their families. This lack of access can lead to a cycle of poverty and violence, perpetuating the crisis. It's essential to recognize that the high homicide rates among black women are not only a matter of individual actions but also a reflection of the broader societal failures. We need to acknowledge and address the systemic issues that have led to this crisis, rather than simply blaming the victims or their communities. For instance, community-based initiatives and programs aimed at providing education, job training, and mental health services can help to reduce the risk of violence and improve overall well-being. Additionally, increasing access to healthcare, including reproductive healthcare, can help to address some of the underlying factors contributing to the high homicide rates. The story of 24-year-old Shanique Davis, who was shot and killed in her home in 2019, is a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of this crisis. Shanique's death was just one of many that year, and her story highlights the need for urgent action to address the systemic failures that led to her murder. Shanique's family and friends described her as a bright and ambitious young woman who had her whole life ahead of her. Her death was a tragedy that sent shockwaves through her community, leaving behind a legacy of pain and sorrow. As we delve deeper into the stories of black women like Shanique, we begin to understand the human cost of this crisis. We see that behind each statistic is a life cut short, a family torn apart, and a community left to pick up the pieces. The story of Shanique Davis is a powerful reminder that the high homicide rates among black women are not just a statistic, they represent a loss of life, a loss of potential, and a loss of hope. We owe it to Shanique and the countless other black women who have lost their lives to violence to take action and demand change. The alarming homicide rates among black women in the USA are a crisis that demands our attention, our empathy, and our action. We must work together to create a safer, more equitable society where black women can thrive and live their lives free from the threat of violence. In conclusion, the high homicide rates among black women are a complex issue that requires a multifaceted approach to address. We must acknowledge the systemic failures, the societal neglect, and the individual stories that highlight the human cost of this crisis. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unsettling truth behind the alarming homicide rates of black women in the USA. I hope this video has sparked a sense of urgency and a desire to take action to address this crisis. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to learn more about related topics, be sure to check out our video on the importance of community-based initiatives in addressing violence against women. I'm diving into a tough conversation today as I try to understand the alarming rise in femicide cases, specifically focusing on the tragic story of a black woman killed by a homeless white man. Can I shed light on this complex issue and spark a meaningful discussion? Let's find out. The tragic case of this black woman's death is a stark reminder of the dark reality of femicide in our society. It's a crisis that disproportionately affects women of color, and it's imperative that we acknowledge the racial and societal implications of this epidemic. The fact that a homeless white man was the perpetrator adds another layer of complexity to this already devastating story. We need to confront the harsh truth that women, especially black women, are vulnerable to violence and are too often silenced or ignored. This incident is not an isolated event, it's part of a larger pattern of violence against women that's deeply ingrained in our society. We need to recognize that femicide is a symptom of a broader problem, one that involves toxic masculinity, systemic inequality, and societal indifference. The intersection of race and homelessness in this case is particularly disturbing, as it highlights the ways in which marginalized communities are often left behind and forced to fend for themselves. We must acknowledge that violence against women is not limited to any particular race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic group. However, we cannot ignore the fact that women of color, particularly black women, face higher rates of violence and death at the hands of men. This is not just a problem of individual perpetrators, but of a system that perpetuates and enables violence against women. We need to have some tough conversations about how we can create a society that values and prioritizes women's lives. There's a sense of complacency that pervades our society when it comes to violence against women. We often view these incidents as isolated events, rather than part of a larger epidemic. But the truth is, femicide is a crisis that affects us all, regardless of our race, gender, or socioeconomic status. We need to break free from this complacency and acknowledge the gravity of the situation. As we delve deeper into the details of this incident, it's clear that the perpetrator's homelessness played a significant role in the events that unfolded. It's a sobering reminder that our society's failure to address homelessness and mental health has devastating consequences. We need to recognize that the perpetrator's actions were not those of a single individual, but of a system that failed him and ultimately failed the victim. The victim in this case was a bright, vibrant woman who had her whole life ahead of her. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and a member of her community. Her life was brutally cut short, and her family and loved ones are left to pick up the pieces. We need to honor her memory by seeking justice and working towards a society that values women's lives. The more I learn about this case, the more I'm struck by the senselessness of it all. A young woman's life was taken away, and for what? What possibly could have driven the perpetrator to commit such a heinous act? These are questions that may never be fully answered, but they're questions that we need to keep asking ourselves. As I reflect on this tragedy, I'm reminded of the countless women who have lost their lives to femicide. I think of the countless families who have been torn apart by violence. I think of the countless communities that have been left to mourn and pick up the pieces. And I'm left with a deep sense of sorrow and outrage. We need to recognize that femicide is not just a women's issue, it's a human rights issue. It's an issue that affects us all, regardless of our gender, race, or socioeconomic status. We need to come together as a society and demand justice and equality for all. The details of this incident are still emerging, but one thing is clear: we need to take action. We need to demand that our leaders take femicide seriously and work towards creating a society that values women's lives. We need to support organizations that work with marginalized communities and provide resources for survivors of violence. As we grapple with the complexities of this case, I'm drawn to the words of Audre Lorde, who so eloquently said, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house." We need to recognize that the systems and structures that perpetuate violence against women are the same systems that perpetuate racism, homophobia, transphobia, and all forms of oppression. We need to work towards a society that values and celebrates diversity in all its forms. The incident is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of speaking out against injustice. It's a call to action, a reminder that we need to be vigilant and proactive in creating a society that values women's lives. The community's reaction to this incident has been incredibly powerful. We've seen people from all walks of life come together to demand justice and equality. We've seen activists and advocates work tirelessly to raise awareness about femicide and violence against women. And we've seen a sense of solidarity and unity that's truly inspiring. One quote that has stuck with me is from the victim's family member, who said, "We will not let her memory be forgotten. We will continue to fight for justice and equality for all." It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope and always a way forward. As we close out this video, I want to leave you with a sense of responsibility and urgency. We need to take action to address femicide and the systemic issues that surround it. We need to create a society that values women's lives and prioritizes their safety and well-being. Let's recap the key points we've discussed today. Femicide is a crisis that affects us all, and it's essential that we acknowledge the racial and societal implications of this epidemic. We need to recognize the intersection of race and homelessness and work towards creating a society that values and prioritizes women's lives. We need to take action and demand justice and equality for all. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. What are your thoughts on this tragic incident? How do you think we can work towards creating a society that values women's lives? And if you want to learn more about femicide awareness, be sure to check out our next video on the topic. Thanks for watching.